Hi guys, welcome to today's stream. Today we'll be talking about how we move from concepts to assets for our game Kuthban, which is in a low poly art style inspired by the biomes in the UAE. My name is Shama Fahim. I'm the production lead of our team, and today I'm joined by our art lead, Umair.
Hello everyone, my name is Umair and I'm the art lead of the Kuthban team. And today I'm going to show you how to create low poly designs from original images, maybe some cars, etc.
So let's start with the concepts. So originally within our group, the way we manage our responsibilities is that we have to break down the segments of moving things from concepts into assets. So since the game is inspired by UAE culture, I tend to be the one that gathers like inspiration images and create sort of like a mood board that I would then share with Umair to sort of familiarize the visuals and themes that we're going for. And what would happen from there is that Umair would sketch up some different sketches that are either directly or indirectly inspired by the concept images that are shared with him, and that would go into our second stage of concepts, of art concepts. So let's take a look at some of the concept images that I had shared in the beginning of our project, which eventually formed what is today our game. As I said earlier, our game is very strongly tied to different biomes in the UAE. So what we did is we started looking at what areas we wanted to focus on. And there were a few that stood out to us, the main being Old City, which is specifically Bay. For those of you who know of this area, it's a very cultural area for the UAE. It consists of stores along a coastal line, and that's filled with a lot of old types of dhow boats that are very Emirati in a sense. So yeah, on the right side of this document, you'll see some 3D renders that almost directly replicate the concept images that are on the left. So when you start thinking about what you want to include, it's always a good idea to draw from real life. So whatever you can find around you, whatever you can find online, there's always going to be images of something that you can draw inspiration from. We did this also with some old architecture, the Qasr al-Husn Palace. We looked at some images of the palace, some images of other palaces. This one was the one that stood out to us the most, since we felt we could most feasibly replicate it in our game and in the art style that we want, the low poly art style. We also looked at modern cityscapes, and we really liked the Dubai Museum of the Future building. On the left, you see the image, and on the right, you see a sketch of it. And Burj Khalifa, of course, and Burj Al Arab. So very prominent sort of like architecture that we wanted to replicate in our game. And these ones are obviously all easily accessible. You'll find loads of 3D renders of the Burj Khalifa online. So it's always a smooth process when you're looking at things that you can take inspiration from in real life, because this is a process a lot of people go through. So you'll find a lot of resources available to you online as well. And we looked at mountain ranges. This is Jabal Jais and Ras Al Khaimah. And you'll see in our game as well, we have a lot of like rocky mountains. The way that it flows is inspired by the mountain range in the UAE, and from those we took like these pictures to look at for references. We didn't take the pictures, of course, we found them online. But as I said, it's always trying to ease the process of developing your game. You don't want to overcomplicate things. You want to be able to feasibly essentially materialize your ideas. From the desert, we drew inspiration from the empty quarter since it's in the UAE, but obviously you can draw inspiration from many types of deserts. We looked at the empty quarter specifically in terms of its color and the way the sun sets on the sand. And we also looked at coastal areas. NPCs were a very big one in terms of what our art lead was trying to replicate into sketches. And it's also typically one of the most fun processes for art leads to take, since you're drawing up your own take of a character. So I mentioned on our last stream a concept image of Firij, which is this group you see right here. The reason I mentioned this before is because it was a very successful format of taking or drawing from UAE culture and animating that into characters that are very representative, but also very unique in the way that they're drawn. So the art style and the cultural themes are important things you want to look at when recreating something into an art asset. So we looked at the traditional dress that you see on the bottom over here, and we wanted this to be replicated in the same art style that the NPCs are on the top here. This document was eventually submitted to Endless Studios, to the art house, to describe sort of what we wanted help in recreating in terms of assets. we also like provide descriptions of what we want. So we said that the NPCs should follow the same art style as above, but also include UAE wardrobe as presented on the top and bottom left. This is in addition to regular 21st century NPC city modest clothing. Of course, when you're creating assets that you're going to put into your game, and the game is based on an already existing country, you want to make it follow the same guidelines that you have in that country. So, for example, if you're making a game that's about Canada, you're not going to describe it as a hot and humid deserty area. You're typically going to include environments that are relevant to the country that you're showcasing. So we did some concept art for our vehicles. These are the images that inspired the low poly vehicles that we have in our game currently. Of course, we add more vehicles. We have around 8 vehicles now, aside from the ones that we were inspired by from the concept art. But it's usually a good starting point. So you don't always have to stick like verbatim to your concept art, but it's a good point to draw inspiration from. And the way we sort of structure this, which will be a topic for our next stream, so stay tuned for that, is that we break down the parts into concept art part 1, part 2, part 3. And we have a huge Google Drive folder that is shared among all members of our group to have this process like accessible to everyone in the group, because it is obviously a group process that we have to go through. So we started in concept part 1, and you'll just see a bunch of images and rough sketches, really, really bad rough sketches, but that's okay, and that's how it starts. And then you go to part 2. You'll notice the sketches start to get more refined. This is where we have our art lead coming in and drawing the sketches in a more, let's say, visually pleasing format. We have some iterations of our logo, of the Qasr al-Husn, and then eventually in concept art 3, you'll see it actually materialize into the low poly art style that we include in our game. So these are the 3D renders of some of our assets, and low poly renders that our programming lead Mohammed rendered. And yeah, that's just a general, I guess, overview of how you can see things change from horrible sketches to actual assets that you can use in your game. Now, before I go on for too long, I would like to introduce a bit of what you're going to see happening now with our art lead, Umair, which is essentially going to summarize the steps of these processes, which is step 1, creating a color palette, step 2, making an outline of the object you want to design, step 3, make polygons with less vertices and fill up the outlined object, and step 4, fill each polygon with a different shade depending on where you want shadows. Now, these steps are specific, of course, to our low poly art style, which you can see from the car here on the right. And yeah, I'm going to hand it over now to Umair so you can see a bit more of how this process happens.
Hello. Thank you, Shama. So now I'm actually going to teach you a bit on how I learned doing low poly designing. So you can see my screen here. So first of all, I'll just try to show you a small concept of how I did some of this. So initially, for example, if you have an image, you can, I chose this image, for example, and this is something I want to convert to maybe a low poly car or something. So what I do is I initially just try to change this image and change its opacity to, for example, maybe around, you can say 80%, or yep, let me. me fix this. So this is the image, and you want to change the opacity to like some around 80% or maybe even lower. So the idea is that you want to make the outline. So we want to change the opacity to around 70%, and I'm going to create a new layer here, and I'll just try to show you a bit on how I go about this. So I just make an initial outline. For example, if I start from something around here, and this is, you might want to zoom in a bit and create an outline, something like this. It's okay. I mean, if it's being filled up, we don't really care about that. We can easily remove that from the color palette. Okay, so you can also always zoom in for more accuracy, but since it's an outlet, you don't really need it. To be honest, you can easily like skip over some of the stuff, and that's the beauty of it, because you just want to create a concept art for the 3D modeling team, who would then see and judge and create something beautiful that could be used in our game. So yeah. So this can get a bit repetitive, and it might get a bit difficult. But again, currently you might not see something so good. But if for example you continue doing this, and you can see how you can edit this. And initially, for example, if you can make an outline something like this, just finish it at any point. You can later edit it. For example, I completed this, and I just want to switch this and change it to like black outline. You can always edit the places where you want the path to go with this tool, which is pretty easy. But again, so this is for example an outline. I can show a rough version of the outline. So I had already made an outline, and I would just put that as more accurate, and you can see this is how the outline looks. So now imagine you already have the color palette, and this step comes after the color palette, because the first step is to just have the colors that you want. So, and this could come from the image itself. So if I increase the opacity back to 100%, you can see the different shades. And when you want to fill in, you can use the colors from here. So what you can do is, you can, for your own reference, you can have something like this and just pick different colors from that you would want. Maybe add 2, 3, 4 different colors. That's the only thing we need, because later we're going to change the shade of it. But anyways, I'm probably going to use the car itself. But anyways, this is how it would look. Now I'm going to change back the opacity to like around 70%, so that you can see the next steps. So in the next steps, I'm going to now show you. This is probably one of the most important steps, because the outline is just for your own reference, and this step is what all low poly designing is about, because this step involves creating small polygons, something like this. For example, in the car, you might see there's a small dent. So this is not one flat rectangle. It might seem like a flat rectangle, but you can see small dents maybe. And so you want to make quadrilaterals or small polygons. That the number of vertices should be pretty small. So let me give you an idea of what the number of vertices represent. So imagine you have a circle, and you want to change the circle to a low poly circle. So initially, we all know basically the circle is actually a polygon. It's like it's a polygon infinite number of vertices. That's basically what it is. But if you want to make a low poly, which means that the number of vertices are pretty low, you can make something like this, and which can be somewhat equivalent to a circle. So imagine you have this, you have something like this. So this can be used in a game, and after 3D modeling this and maybe adding like some shadows, some shades, for example, imagine this is a sphere, then having somewhat like this 3D kind of structure, like shapes like these. They always help, like something like this. All you have to do is also think about how it is curving inwards or outwards, and then using the power of different shades that you can use to design this. So that's the basic idea. So now we would want to fill up this outline with shapes, and we're going to use the same tool in Illustrator. It's much easier if you want to do it with an iPad, but I want to show you how it could still be done in a computer, maybe if you have an Adobe Illustrator, even with the mouse. So you fill up the entire space with different polygons, and the aim is to keep the number of the vertices in the polygon pretty low, maybe about 4 or 5 vertices, maybe 6 vertices, and that's the maximum. You can also edit this by clicking and extending it a bit so that you can easily edit that and get back to it. So it's pretty, it does not have to, it shouldn't bother you if it's pretty messy in the beginning, because you're going to get back to it, and in the very final stage you're going to edit it and refine it so that you send a very good version to your production team and the 3D modeling team, who could understand it and who could also explain and design something from it. So imagine this is how maybe the front looks. So, but this is actually a flat surface, so a flatter surface, I would say. So let me show you how you could go through a curved surface maybe. So imagine this is a curved surface. You could do something like this. Let me go back to this layer that I was working in. This is the, yep, it's this layer. Okay. So now, watercolor. Okay. Fix this color for you guys. Okay, anyways. So we have this layer, and we want to add to this curve part. So sorry about that. Okay, now you have something like this, and you know it's a bit curved. And as I showed you with the circle, you want to add you want to show these curves. So from far away, this will look something like this. So it's like a 3D-ish effect. So maybe it's a curved part, but now we have almost changed it to something where you can visually see how there are shadows, where originally we wouldn't be able to see if we are looking at this curve live, we won't be able to see. So for example, the idea is basically if you have something like this, if you have something like this, and we want to follow this path in a way that, like, basically it's just segments of this. So it's basically basically 2-3 lines. So okay, yeah. So I guess you guys get the idea. So I'm going to continue adding different shapes, and you can see how it would look after I've made it. And it might not look very good in the beginning because we're just adding curves, so it might not look appealing. In we're adding image, we're adding polygons, maybe that's what you call it. So it might not look visually pleasing because we have not filled it with colors, and we have to choose the colors in a way that it adds good shadows. So let me continue, and you can see. And fill the space. This process takes a lot of patience in the end, because initially you might be seeing this kind of stuff, but the borders would be removed later when you fill it, and the real beauty comes after that, and the end effect is quite satisfactory.
Umair, what would you recommend for, say, people who are not very skilled in using Adobe Illustrator?
So I'm using Adobe Illustrator. Well, you can use like, for example, apps like Procreate. You can basically, the idea is you just have to draw some small polygons, and as I mentioned, so the beauty about this type of drawing and this type of art is that you don't really have to be very skilled in this, because when I started working this was my first time working on low polygon style. And you can see, for example, this is a space here. If you didn't have Adobe Illustrator, you had like normal Paint, and I'm using Adobe Illustrator because I personally don't use Adobe Illustrator as well. I use like some other apps, but I'm using Adobe Illustrator here because this is something that's mostly used by people, so I want to keep it as easy as possible. But basically, you just want to create some polygons, and if in anything that if there's any app in which you can create polygons, maybe by hand, you can do it by hand, and you only have to make some rectangle here, triangle here, and some almost looks like a trapezium here. You just have to make these, and I think the idea of using Adobe Illustrator is that you can use this tool, which is the pen tool, and you can basically make polygons, and the small polygons easily, because you have to just click. You have to just form 2 or 3 vertices, and you can click on the anchor point, or maybe the first vertex that you created over the first point, and just it would create a shape. So that's the basic idea, and you can actually use anything. You can probably even use Paint, and if you want to. So that's my suggestion, that you don't really have to worry about the not knowing the tool Adobe Illustrator, because this is something you can work through any other app. It just requires thinking from a different perspective, and here it's pretty easy, because you just have to create, like, you can actually see how I just created one big rectangle here, one big triangle here, one triangle here, and a quadrilateral like a trapezium or something here. So it just fills up the space. And now I'm going to, and after, you won't be able to see much right now because I'm continuously just creating shapes, and the end result is something that looks good. And I've already created a version which only has these shapes, and I'm going to show you the version after I've created few more of these polygons. So let me work on this side. Maybe, for example, I create another triangle or something. So the idea is just fill up the entire space with shapes, and you don't have to actually don't have to worry about if it doesn't look right, if it looks weird, because it can be changed in the end, and that's when that defining part comes when you're about to add color. So don't worry about that. So right now, for example, now I'm going to just add a few more stuff from what I see right here from the image, and then I'll jump into the version which I have already made. A lot of polygons, not basically complete covered everything, but a lot of it. So I filled this entire gap with the big polygon, and you can easily divide this. And I just did it for now to add some to complete the space, and you can easily add another in betweens as well. So like you can add after you have unselected this, you can add another shape in the middle. So don't worry about that. Okay, so now imagine you've completely filled this space with polygons. So this is something. This is how it will look. So in this case, I use for example for these rims, I just created a kind of a circle that I showed in the beginning, even for the tires as well. And I just left this space blank because this space has to be this space does not have to be fully designed or something, because this space is basically just for light, and in the games you can just add some color lights or some rays or maybe the glow effect to it. You just have to, the idea is just have to make something that the 3D modeling team could easily understand. So now I have this. I'll try to change the opacity back to 100 so I can get like a good color from this. And you can see that these are the different colors. We also have the color palette. We can refer to that as well, or you can just pick it from the image. Just pick few 3-4 colors as a start. And what you have to do is just select any shape and just add a color. For example, I added this color. Maybe I want a bit of a lighter color. So you can just click on this color. This color refers to the inside fill color, and the other one refers to the border, which we have selected as none. So we don't want any border, and this happens when you just fill it automatically changes to none, and we don't want the borders. We just want the inside color because the border is black, and it would take more effort. So now I just want to maybe make this a bit lighter, and you see this is like a grayscale. You can go as dark, maybe light, and this is like a shader kind of thing. So this is the reason why I was talking about having a color palette with few colors maybe. So I can just have this color, and then I can adjust accordingly with different shades. Anyway, so now I'm going to fill this space with more. I'll fill this area with different colors, and you can see how it would look. And I'll fill this one for this area is a bit light because this is so you should also think about how different areas would be darker and lighter. So this is the front of the car, and if you don't just think about the reflection here, just ignore the reflection. Just imagine this car is not like right under the light or something, but it's in normal cases this part would be lighter and the top part would be lighter as compared to the other parts. I mean, the color is obviously same, but in light, under some kind of light and some kind of reflections from any side, this area would definitely look a bit lighter unless you have light underneath or something from somewhere around this region. But anyways, for our game purposes, because the light comes from the above, this area would be lighter, and all of these areas would be lighter. We don't have to worry about that too much, because once you have designed a 3D model and you add it to the game, the lighting and the shadows can be added accordingly, and we don't really have to look at this the drawings part. That can happen from the Unity side using the camera effects. So now I'm going to fill this with maybe the same color, and I'll just make it lighter. So the idea is never to have like two polygons or two different shapes to have same color, like two shapes that are connected, or to have same colors, because in that way we won't be able to see the differences in the polygons. So now this color, I'll make it a bit lighter, but still you can see how there's a divide or something. There's a difference. You can see the difference here. It's divided a bit, but you can also make this more prominent by changing the color a bit here. So if you want, that's totally up to you. And I'm going to now make this part a bit lighter for your reference, so you can see how the colors are very important in this part. So I'm going to make this pretty light. Maybe I'll have this as the lightest part so far, and I can just use this and make this side a bit dark. So my advice would be, if you want to change color of the next of the neighbor polygon, just take colors from the neighbor polygon and just change the shade a bit, so that it would look as if it's blending in. The thing is, we don't want it to we want these lines to show, these differences to show, so that that's how low poly design is. If we wanted a gradient fill, then it wouldn't be low poly at all. So this is what we are looking for, because in low poly there we can see from far away. Now I'll just fill this as dark black, or on the darker version, darker color maybe, and maybe this part as well a bit dark, completely dark, something like that. So I'm going to complete this top few parts, and then I'm going to show you how it looks. So maybe this part would be a bit darker. You also don't have to worry about worry about if the colors are right or not, because once you make the entire version, everything adds up. And you can also make few changes there, and it's never perfect right at the beginning. It's even the final version might not be perfect. You might have to talk to the different people and get their opinion, and they might tell you that you can see I added this color and this doesn't seem that right. You might want to darken this a bit. So it's always about how it looks, how it feels. It doesn't really have to follow a particular rule. So I just want maybe this one. I might maybe want this part to be a bit lighter. And I would want this to follow the same color as this. So again, I'll say this, you need to be very patient for this. But definitely the end result is is very, very good. As soon as you see a good design in the end, the feeling is unparalleled. Okay, so right after I finish this part, I'll show you how it looks, and you can see for yourself that so far we're getting there. The end goal is not pretty far. Maybe you want this part to follow something of this color, but again, if it is throwing us too far, too apart, we can just change this to something lighter. So yeah, so if I remove this background image, you can see so far it looks something like this. It doesn't look too bad. Personally, I feel it looks decent so far. And if we were to add all of these polygons, we might be able to see how it's gonna look in the end. You might see that it's pretty good. It's definitely good. So now this top part is probably it's under the sun. So this part and this part, these are probably the lightest, but I am going to keep this pretty light. I'm going to have a much lighter color here because I think the color, this is like right under the sun or right under the light, depending on your game. So this should be pretty light. And okay, and this part, just gonna go a little bit. You can see that the color, the shade here is a bit different from this, and so that we realize this, we can easily change it to. This is because there's some sort of maybe redness or some other color. We can easily change it to the color gradient, the shades that we were actually going for, and use that. So that happens, and that's because we directly picked up color from the image. So it's always good to stick to your color palettes. And I had a darker version here, and I had a lighter version here, and so now we have another important thing is to know where there are where there should be shadows and where there's like a 3D structure, 3D-ish figure, even in the 2D format, you could see. I'm going to show you right now. So imagine you have a rectangle, and imagine this is a cuboid, and so imagine this is your cuboid. It's very important to know, to just think about it. I mean, it comes with experience that you know that if the light is coming from this direction, you'll have to make this pretty light. For example, if the light is indirectly, this is probably the lightest this can go. I'll have to change the shade a bit to something like this, but that's a different thing. anyways, now we know that if the angle of the light is, if it's coming from somewhere around here, then this would be a bit lighter, and the top would be the darkest, and the backside is probably like pitch dark, depending on the surrounding light. But for example, if the light is coming from somewhere around this side, we would want to make this dark, and this one as well. But depending on the height of the light, if it's coming from below, this would be pretty dark, and this would be a bit lighter. I guess I might be wrong, but it all depends on perspective. But again, this is something. This is how it looks. This is like a 3D-ish design. So the same concept applies to the car here as well. When we are creating different parts, for example, part like this, or maybe something like this, we want to keep this, for example. I will just take a color from here, and we want to keep this maybe like this, then to a color, to this color maybe, and then we would want this part to be a bit darker, maybe around this much. And since the light is coming from above, this one is lighter, this part is still a bit light, this one is probably the darkest part, so we want to darken this even more. So it's important to see how the idea, the perspective of looking at 3D objects in a 2D design. It's important to see how it can affect your drawing, and so we can see how this adds another level to our design. And yeah, and okay, so this is an important concept we should look at, and the reason is that it applies to these curved edges that I drew here. And if I want to color this, it's pretty helpful. For example, if I want to keep a light shade here, a dark shade here, I want to go lighter around here. It does not have to be the color, we can change the color later. It's just the idea, and maybe this one is of similar intensity as this, maybe be a bit darker. And if you want this to be a bit, we can have this a bit lighter, a bit darker, I guess. Sorry, lighter, because I believe if this is more horizontal, you can do something like this and have the and let this have this color. So you can see from far away how this looks. Obviously, this is pretty light. We have to darken it as compared to upper parts, but again, the idea is to think of the how the 2D object would look if it's like made 3D. Let's darken this part a bit, okay, yeah. So now I'm going to just add more shapes, and I'm going to fill in more shapes, sorry, and let's see how it goes. I'm just going to add this, and you can see now that looks something like this. So I had already created already half-made version, so fill in more with slightly different colors. So I'm going to work on that now. So it's because this modeling takes a lot of time, and you can see how there are so many different how much time it takes. You can see if we remove this, you can see how many different shapes are still present, how many different polygons I have to still fill, even though I made a lot of them so far. I filled a lot of them in the previous one that I showed in this one, but again there's still so many left. And so So I'm going to start working on this side maybe, and as I said, I'll keep this part. I'll keep this white just for now. We can change it to red maybe. I don't know. It's the front headlights. We can change it to yellow. We don't really care about it that much because this is where the headlights come, and normally the headlights they're just no. So normally we just add like glowing colors in our game, so we don't really see much of the 3D of the 3D model. Or so for the concept art, the other curves are pretty important. I'm just going to keep this pretty dark because if I show the original picture, it's something like this, and I don't want to make the middle thing so right now. I just want to completely change this because in the end it depends on you what you want to make. And so now, for example, now I'm going to fill this part with maybe start with darker colors maybe.
So you would say then, Umair, that like a general rule of thumb is that you should start with like the bigger, more general parts of the art and then leave the details for last?
Yeah. So like as I started with this section, that's because that's probably the easiest. So you make this. The first part is basically just getting the outline, and the outline does not care about the tiny features. For example, you can see the outline is something like this, and in my shape it's something like this. This is going to change, so you don't really care about that. So the first part is get the outline, and then after that just start filling the bigger stuff and not the details. It's just like coloring in like a coloring book, and you're just coloring some person or some car or something, and you just get the easiest stuff first and then go into the details. And that's how it is. You can see how the polygons become much smaller. You have to zoom in, you have to zoom out and see how it looks. For example, I believe this part is pretty dark, so I'm going to change it to some darker color like this. So it's always important to work on the tougher, you can say the tougher, the easier part first, and keep the tougher part or to later. And even you don't have to care too much about the the bigger details, the very small details, because it's just low poly, and that's actually a good thing about low poly, that you can get away with a lot of things, because some of these things might not make any sense to you, but in the low poly, this is how the design is. It's pretty good in that case, because there's a lot of room of freedom for a designer, especially. Now, for example, I'm going to fill this a bit, fill this more, and we can see how it looks. I might show you the end border after this, and I just want to fill in more of this, and we can see how it looks. But I would say the concept part is pretty important, because even though the most important part is 3D modeling, because that is something that would be added to the game, but without actually knowing where maybe the dent is, where the curve is, and where different blocks would come, the 3D modeler would never know. It's pretty difficult for a 3D modeler to come up with something right on spot, because that's how it is. It's pretty difficult. You need to have the blueprints. You just need to understand where I should make the how well, you should just make it helps you understand the dimensions, the depth maybe in which a particular like a 3D the curve or something goes. I don't know the width, the height, gives you a general idea, and it's pretty difficult uh, without it. So I'm going to fill this up a bit more, and we can. And then I'm just going to jump to the final version that I already made. The final version is just this is just the front side, and uh, it's not a completed version. Just to give you an idea. And for example, I'm going to keep this. Yes. Um,
So essentially, filling up the colors and choosing where to make the shapes is a process of trial and error, correct?
yeah, definitely. As I showed in my as I showed just previously as well. Like I had started with a different color on the top, and you could see that with the color I chose from the for the color palette I chose, it had a slight different shade. So as soon as I realized that if you look at it and there's, for example, if this color was I don't know, maybe something maybe something like this, or let me go to with a lighter version or something like this. You can easily see how it is not how it's different, and how you can still use it, but again I would want to stick to a specific color palette, and uh, that because that helps with the theme. uh, so there's a lot of errors there can be a lot of errors. You can see uh, you can I can try to find some errors. For example, if I remove this background layer, you can see this space has not been filled yet. You would want to maybe fit in a space in I don't know a triangle or something, or a rectangle, or whatever that helps. You can see how maybe this spot has not been fixed, and that's easy. That's for the end part. So the first part is like in anything else in life, maybe for example in game development, and in anything else, for example uh, like maybe if a software house or whatever, the first part is just to get the basic structure done, and you can just refine it later, and you don't have to worry about it that much. um, so does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it perfectly does. Also, I think in conclusion to our whole stream today as well, a lot of the main things that you should keep in mind when trying to translate your concepts into art, is to have the basics figured out. It's always about starting from the basic and working your way up, as we've seen from your demo, and of
Yeah.
course the details end up being refined later as you will have a clearer idea of what you're going for anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about right. So, for example, I have now filled the entire thing. This is like still not the very complete version, but this is, for example, I just filled the entire thing, and then I'm open to, for example, suggestions from everyone else. And what I showed you how I initially where I started, and I didn't do anything special. I just created polygons, and I just fill in the shapes, thinking about how it would look. There might be a lot of rooms of improvement. For example, this polygon is it's pretty big. I can just cut it into two, maybe try to think about how it would look much better. So it's all about trial and error, to be honest. If I remove this background, you can see, and I would also want to like remove this, and you can see you can see how it looks pretty good. It looks pretty decent. So, and if there are places where you're in doubt or something, you want to fix that, you want to improve it, there's always room for improvement. For example, maybe if you want this, I don't know, the wheel, the rims, if you want it more, uh, you can say circular in a low poly style, you can add more anchors and you can just fill it in like this. So there's always room for improvement. Just follow the basics. So for example, this, if I just want to go a bit further right now, so I want to maybe add this part, and also think about how this part is in terms of depth, it's behind. In terms of the layer, it should be behind this wheel. So you always try to think about how it would look, how the shade would be darker because it's pretty much inside this region. So I would just want to keep this pretty much dark, so much darker than normal, because almost no light goes inside. So this is how it looks, and this place, even in the image, you can see it's pretty dark, and this is because almost no light goes inside. So you want to keep this area as dark as possible. Maybe if you want, I would go with this 100% dark, and you can see if I just remove this image, this kind of shows how this how there's like a dark area behind the tire, because this kind of shows how this area is behind the tire. And we also saw, as you were talking about trial and error, we also saw how if you remove the background image and everything, you can see how there are areas to fill, and I call this the polishing, and because you just come back to it and fill up the different spaces. Maybe I need another polygon here, but I can add a polygon as well, but I don't really have to be honest. I can always have a bigger triangle or something in the background, because this is something that needs to be dark. Or I could just change this, maybe add something like this, fills up the space. But anyways, I mean, you could have also created a bigger circle or something in the background, because this goes in the background, it does not show up. So again, the goal is to present something to the 3D modeling team, so that they understand where how they're going to draw, how they're going to make a 3D model of the car. And this is how it looks. You can complete the entire car, you can complete the entire thing, and I believe the original car was something like this. Yeah, and I mean, you can extend these lines or further and complete the entire thing. But this is the basic idea of it. And as I told, don't worry about these areas. You can just the reason why I didn't focus on the rims is that normally when you're making a 3D model, you can easily fit in a rim or 3D model rim or something. But even if you want to, it's not too difficult. I can show you how you can also try to make some 3D designs for these as well, but it's not really necessary. But yeah, that's how I make my low poly designs.
Awesome, Umair. That was a really wonderful explanation. So another point I'd like to add to that is to always make sure to keep adding layers whenever you're doing something, so that you can, again, like reiterate, edit, update on each of the individual things that you make within those layers. So main thing from today's stream was that when you're moving things from concept to low poly art, is the process of trial and error and just figuring out where the light shines, where it's hidden, matching your color based on the direction of light in your game. And yeah, if you want to see more of how we're gonna make this low poly art into 3D renders, stay tuned for our stream next week on Tuesday with our lead programmer, Mohammed, who will show you exactly how to do that. And yeah, thank you for tuning in today. Thank you so much, Umair.
Thank you so much.